Quinnen Williams is playing like an elite level interior defensive lineman. We're going to talk about it. Hey, what's going on? I'm Matt O'Leary, back with another video on this Monday morning after a New York Jets win. Love to see it. Zach Wilson played strong in the fourth quarter, ended up salvaging and putting up some pretty okay numbers in a box score that looked ugly, but the box score doesn't tell the whole story. But in this one, we want to focus on the defense and one player in particular, Quinnen Williams, who has been, I think, by far the Jets' best player in yesterday and throughout the entirety of the season, and hasn't really been particularly close. Before we get started, just want to mention you can follow on socials at Matt O'Leary NY. If you haven't already, please make sure to check out the Just Jets podcast wherever it is that you get your podcasts. So I think Quinnen Williams is about to get paid, and paid pretty handsomely, because if you look at what he did this past week against the Steelers, and then just what he's done this year and where that would be in terms of performance from an interior defensive lineman, he hasn't got paid yet. And people were asking, it's like, hey, it's a make or break year for Quinnen. And through 4 games, he has absolutely lived up to the billing. Yesterday in the win against the Steelers, 6 tackles, 1 tackle for a loss, a sack, and 2 quarterback hits. He was all over the field. He was blowing up the interior of that Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line. He was involved, it's seemingly on every single play. Obviously, we know the defensive line in general has been kind of quiet, but this was like by far their best game. And it's probably by far Quinnen's best game, and he's played really well so far this year. Against Cincinnati last week, this was the game that I was very, very critical of on the defensive line, as were a ton of Jets fans and people who cover the New York Jets. But even against Cincinnati, after he gets into it on the sideline, I thought he came back and was phenomenal pretty much the rest of the way. And he had 4 pressures in that game, a sack, 2 hits, and a hurry. So overall on the season now, through 4 games, 4 weeks of the season, 3 sacks, 4 quarterback hits, and 13 tackles. This is the kind of player that you are hoping for when you take him 3rd overall. He's been, through the first 3 years of his career, a little up and down. There have been moments that have been really, really good. There have been moments where he's been a little MIA. He has not been MIA. Through the first 4 games, he's been very much involved. His pace of 3 sacks, 4 quarterback hits, and 13 tackles, if he continues at that pace for an entire season, for 17 games this year, he is pacing out to 13 sacks, 16 quarterback hits, and 55 tackles. That's how good he's been through the first 4 games of the year. And obviously that has to continue, right? You can't just say, oh, well, that's what he's on pace for. That's what he's going to hit. He has to continue playing at this level. But for context, if he were to finish with 13 sacks, 16 quarterback hits, and 55 tackles, that would put him 3rd in sacks for interior defensive linemen. And again, basing the numbers off of last year's production, right, the 2020. 1st in hits and 1st in tackles. That would be a top 3 player at the position. And right now, that's what he's playing like. I mean, no one is touching Aaron Donald. He is by far the best interior player. But through the first 4 games of the year, Quinnen Williams is absolutely in the conversation as a top 5 interior player in football, which is what you want. That's why you take someone like Quinnen Williams 3rd overall. That's why you would then pay someone like Quinnen Williams the money that it was going to be to keep him around. I think he is going to get rewarded handsomely, and I think the Jets would be wise to extend him. Right, this is his 4th year in the league. They picked up the 5th-year option, so if there was ever a time for him to cash in, it would be after this year. He didn't get the extension after 3 years, and I think that was probably fair. It was a no-brainer to pick up that 5th-year option, obviously, but I don't think he did enough to where you felt comfortable giving him, $15+ million, maybe even closer to the $20 million mark per year, based on what we've seen. But in year 4, he's absolutely looked the part, and he has to continue to play like this through the remainder of the season. If the Jets defense is going to have any kind of shot, and they were good yesterday. This was by far the best game they played. They allowed 20 points. They created turnovers, and they were going up against Kenny Pickett in his first ever NFL action and Mitch Trubisky in the first half. So let's not like completely run wild. But that's a game where the defense has to take over, and I thought they did. They kept the Jets in this game. They created turnovers. They got to the quarterback, and this defensive line has to play well in order for this defense to be effective. I mean, you can't ask for anything more out of guys like Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed, who I think have been honestly phenomenal, like legitimately phenomenal through the first 4 games of the year. The defensive line was the one who needed that extra boost, and I think that you can make the case that they've got it because of Quinnen. He's been by far the best player on that defensive line. He's the leader of that group. Yes, he's still technically a young player, but he's in his 4th year now. He's getting into that veteran status, and he's going to have to get paid. And it seems almost silly, but we're talking about at this point the Jets can't afford not to pay him because he's going to be such an important part of this defense. It was always about for Quinnen what he would look like with other edge rushers. Excuse me. He is still getting double teamed. He is still winning, which is great. And I think this is someone that you want to build around. So Quinnen Williams is going to get paid in the offseason. I think you do extend him. And like I said, he's probably going to be, it's a wide gap per year, but probably somewhere in that $15 to $20 million a year player. I don't know if it gets all the way up to 20, but like $18 million a year roughly. So that seems probably about right for where he will be in terms of contracts on the interior of the defensive line. But I can't say enough how impressed I've been with Quinnen Williams this year. And just overall, I think he's been arguably the Jets' best player. It's been him, DJ Reed, and Sauce Gardner. Those have been the best players on defense, and it's really not that close. So let me know what you think down in the comments below of Quinnen Williams' start to the season. He's about to get paid, in my opinion. Do you think the Jets should pay him? What do you think? What do you think of the projection? Sound off. Let me know. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Matt O'Leary, and I'll catch you next time.